The stars looked different through the viewing screen of the Veltharian research ship. Commander Velthos pressed his scaled hands against the cool metal controls and watched the distant planet grow larger. His crew had traveled for months to reach this place. They called it Kepler 4042c, but the Veltharians had their own name for it. They called it the Burning Death. The planet spun slowly in the darkness of space. Its surface showed angry red and orange colors that meant trouble. Dr. Nethara floated beside the commander, her breathing apparatus making soft clicking sounds. She was the ship's expert on life forms, but she did not expect to find any life. On this world, the readings are strange, she said in her musical voice. Something is wrong with our machines. Velthos looked at the data flowing across his screen. The numbers made no sense. The planet's surface temperature changed from burning hot to freezing cold every day. The air was full of poison gases that would kill most creatures in minutes. Acid rain fell regularly, and the ground shook with powerful earthquakes. Yet their sensors showed something impossible. Cities, whispered Nethara. The machines say there are cities down there. The other crew members gathered around the viewing screens. They were scientists and explorers from the peaceful Veltharian worlds. Their home planets were gentle places with soft breezes and clean water. They had traveled across the galaxy to study dangerous planets like this one, but always from a safe distance. Perhaps the sensors are broken, suggested Navigator Colvin. No life could exist on such a world. But the readings continued to show the impossible. Energy signatures that meant power plants, geometric patterns that looked like roads and buildings, large areas that seemed to be farms, though how anything could grow in that poisoned soil was beyond understanding. Velthos made a decision. Take us into orbit. Careful orbit. We will use the long-range scanners. The ship moved closer to the deadly planet. Through the viewing screens, they could see the surface more clearly now. What they saw made them question everything they knew about life in the universe. There were indeed cities, not small settlements or research stations, but large, sprawling communities with thousands of buildings. Roads connected different areas, and vehicles moved along them. In some places, they could see what looked like farms carved into the sides of mountains. This is impossible, Dr. Nethara said again. Look at the atmospheric readings. The air would burn our lungs in seconds. The radiation levels would kill us in minutes. How can anyone live there? As they watched, a storm began to form on the planet's surface. But this was not an ordinary storm. The clouds glowed with a sickly green light, and when the rain began to fall, their instruments showed it was pure acid. Any ship caught in such a storm would be dissolved in hours. Yet the cities below did not shut down. The vehicles continued to move. Lights stayed on in the buildings. Whatever lived down there treated this deadly storm like Veltharians would treat a gentle spring shower. "Commander," called out scanner operator Ithek from his station, "I'm detecting massive energy output from several locations. They appear to be harvesting the storm." Velthos floated over to look at Ithek's readings. The scanner showed energy collectors spread across the city rooftops. As the acid rain fell and the poisonous wind blew, these collectors gathered. Power from the storm itself. It was like watching someone stick their hand into fire and pull out gold. What manner of beings could live in such conditions? Wondered Dr. Nethara. Their biology must be completely different from anything we know. The ship's computer began analyzing the data they had collected. Slowly, a picture emerged of the planet below. The surface temperature swung from 60 degrees above the boiling point of water to 40 degrees below freezing every single day. The atmosphere contained gases that would kill most known life forms. Earthquakes shook the ground. Constantly, lightning storms raged across the continents, carrying enough electrical power to destroy entire cities. And yet, in the middle of all this chaos, intelligent beings had built a civilization. "Look at this," said Ithek, pointing to his screen. "There are more settlements. dozens of them spread across the planet. Some are built on active volcanoes. Others are floating on seas of liquid metal. Dr. Nethara studied the readings with growing amazement. The population appears to be over 50,000 in the largest settlement alone. They have agriculture, industry, transportation networks. This isn't just survival. This is a thriving society. As they continued their observations, they noticed something else strange. The beings below seemed to time their activities with the planet's dangerous cycles. When the acid storms came, they increased their energy collection. When the earthquakes struck, they used the ground movement to power massive machines. They had not just learned to survive on this death world. They had learned to use its dangers as tools. "We must report this to the Council," said Velthos. "A discovery of this magnitude will change everything we know about the possibilities of life." But Dr. Nethara was not finished studying the impossible planet. "Wait," she said. "I want to run deeper scans. We need to understand what we're looking at." For hours, they studied the planet below. They watched the beings go about their daily lives in conditions that would instantly kill any Veltharian. They saw children playing in areas where the air itself was poison. They watched workers repairing buildings during electrical storms that could power an entire Veltharian city. "Their technology is more advanced than ours in some ways," admitted Navigator Colvin. "Look how they build their structures. They're designed to bend with the earthquakes instead of breaking. Their materials can resist the acid rain. Their power systems use the planet's own violence as fuel." As the planet rotated beneath them, they saw more wonders. Vast greenhouses where plants grew in carefully controlled poison atmospheres. Mining operations that worked inside active volcanoes. Transportation tubes that shot vehicles across continents at incredible speeds, using the planet's magnetic storms for power. "Who are they?" whispered Dr. Nethara. "What kind of beings choose to live in hell and make it into heaven?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. The Veltharians had explored many worlds, met many species, but never had they encountered anything like this. Here was a civilization that had taken the most hostile environment imaginable and turned it into home. Commander Velthos made his decision. "We will observe for another day cycle. Document everything. Then we will attempt contact." The crew looked at him with surprise and fear. Contact with such beings? What if they were as dangerous as the world they lived on? But Velthos was curious now. These mysterious beings had done something no other species had ever achieved. They had conquered a death world not by changing it, but by changing themselves. He had to know how. He had to know who they were. As the ship continued its orbit, the planet below continued to rage with storms and earthquakes and acid rain, and through it all, the lights of civilization glowed steadily in the darkness, like stars that had fallen to Earth and refused to be extinguished. Governor Taeho stood on the observation deck of New Busan's central tower and watched the morning acid storm roll across the valley. The green clouds moved like a living thing, spreading their burning rain over the city below. He sipped his coffee and checked the daily reports on his tablet. "Good storm today," said Engineer Mi-sun as she joined him at the window. "The collectors are pulling in 30% more power than yesterday." Taeho nodded. The storms were getting stronger as the planet moved closer to summer, which meant more energy for the city. It also meant more corrosion damage to repair, but that was the price of living on such a world. Every benefit came with a cost. "How are the new housing blocks coming along?" he asked. "Dongwu's team finished the foundations yesterday," Mi-sun replied. "The earthquake dampeners are working perfectly. Even that magnitude 7 quake last week barely registered in the new buildings." Through the window, they could see workers moving through the storm. They wore simple protective suits that looked thin and light, nothing like the heavy armor that most aliens would need to survive the acid rain. The workers moved quickly and efficiently, checking equipment and making repairs while the poisonous rain fell around them. Jae-min was one of those workers. He climbed the tall energy collectors with easy confidence, his suit protecting him from the worst of the acid while he adjusted the storm panels. To him, this was just another day at work. He had been born on this world, like most of the 50,000 people who called New Busan home. The deadly storms were as normal to him as sunshine was to beings on gentler worlds. Down in the agricultural district, So Young led her farming teams through the greenhouse complexes. The plants they grew were specially designed to thrive in the planet's harsh conditions. They drank poisoned water and breathed toxic air, and somehow turned it all into food that could feed the city. The root vegetables are ready for harvest. So Young called to her workers. Remember to wear your breathing masks in Section 7. The methane levels are higher today. Her team moved through the greenhouses like dancers, knowing exactly where to step and what to touch. They had learned to read the subtle signs that meant danger, the small changes in air color that warned of gas pockets, the slight tremors that meant earthquakes were coming. In the city's defense center, Hye-jin watched the morning reports with satisfaction. Crime was low, as it always was in New Busan. When everyone faced the same daily dangers, people tended to work together instead of fighting each other. But she had other concerns today. "Ma'am," said her assistant, pointing to a screen. "The orbital scanners are picking up something unusual." Hye-jin looked at the display. A ship hung in orbit above them, trying to hide behind one of the planet's small moons. It was clearly alien design, nothing like the efficient ships that humans built. This vessel looked like it was made for creatures who needed perfect safety and comfort. "How long has it been there?" she asked. 3 days, ma'am. They've been scanning us with long-range sensors." Hye-jin smiled. Aliens always thought they were so clever when they found human settlements. They would observe from what they thought was a safe distance, taking readings and making notes, never realizing that humans had been watching them from the moment they arrived. "Send word to Won-sik," she ordered. "Tell him we have visitors." Dr. Won-sik was in his laboratory when the message came. He was working on a new project, trying to design plants that could grow directly in the planet's acid rain without needing greenhouse protection. It was delicate work that required understanding both the chemistry of the poison atmosphere and the biology of Earth plants. "Aliens?" he said when he read Hye-jin's message. "What kind?" "The nervous kind," came her reply. "Their ship design suggests they come from very comfortable worlds. They probably think this planet is uninhabitable." Won-sik laughed. Most aliens did think that. Humans had met several space-traveling species over the years, and they all had the same reaction to human worlds: horror, amazement, and complete inability to understand how anyone could live in such places. "Should we make contact?" he asked. "The governor wants to study them first. Find out what they want." Won-sik nodded and turned back to his work, but part of his mind was already thinking about the aliens above. What would they make of New Busan? What would they think when they saw children playing in the acid rain or watched farmers harvesting crops during an earthquake? In the orbital station above the city, the alien ship continued its observations. The beings inside were having trouble believing what they saw. Their instruments showed impossible things. Humans working outside during deadly storms. Children playing games that involved dodging geysers of superheated steam. Farmers who treated poisonous soil like garden earth. Down in New Busan's recreation center, those children were indeed playing. Hae-won and Ji-woo were competing in a game called Storm Running, where they had to race through a maze of obstacles while artificial acid rain fell around them. It was training disguised as fun, teaching them the skills they would need to survive as adults on their dangerous world. "Too slow," called Hae-won as she dodged a spray of simulated poison gas. "You have to feel where the wind is going to blow next." Ji-woo gritted his teeth and tried to keep up. The game was hard, but it was also exciting. There was something thrilling about dancing with danger and winning. His parents had told him that children on other worlds played much safer games, but he could not imagine how that would be any fun. As the day went on, the alien ship watched more wonders. They saw humans harvesting energy from lightning strikes during thunderstorms. They watched mining teams that worked inside active volcanoes, extracting rare metals from the molten rock. They observed transportation systems that shot cargo across continents using magnetic fields generated by the planet's own electromagnetic storms. In the city's engineering district, Minho supervised the thermal processing plants. These massive facilities took the planet's poisonous atmosphere and processed it into clean air and fresh water. The work was hot and dangerous, but Minho's team handled it with casual expertise. "Reactor 3 is running a little warm," reported one of his technicians. Warm, in this case, meant temperatures that would instantly vaporize most alien species. But to Minho's team, it was just a minor adjustment needed in their daily routine. "Increase the coolant flow by 5%, Minho ordered, "and check the radiation shields in Section 12. The aliens watching from orbit could not understand how these beings could work in such conditions. Their instruments showed radiation levels that should have been instantly fatal. Yet the humans below went about their work as if they were gardening. On a peaceful spring day, as evening approached, the acid storm began to fade. The green clouds pulled back, revealing a landscape that looked like something from a nightmare. Rocky ground stretched in all directions, carved into strange shapes by years of acid rain and earthquakes. In the distance, volcanoes glowed red against the darkening sky, but scattered across this hellish landscape were the lights of human civilization. Cities and towns and farming settlements, all thriving in conditions that would kill most galactic species in minutes. The aliens above could not understand it. How had these beings not just survived, but prospered in such a place? In New Busan, the daily work continued. Street cleaners washed away the acid residue from the day's storm. Repair teams fixed the minor damage caused by the morning's earthquake. Children did their homework while their parents prepared dinner and planned for tomorrow's challenges. To the humans, it was just another ordinary day on their extraordinary world. But to the aliens watching from space, it was proof that the universe held wonders beyond their understanding. They had found a species that had learned to make paradise from hell itself. Security Chief Hyojin smiled as she watched the latest reports from her surveillance team. The alien ship was still trying to hide behind the planet's moon, taking what they thought were secret observations of New Busan. They had no idea that human technology had been tracking them since the moment they entered the system. "They're being very careful," reported her assistant, looking at the data flowing across his screen. "Long-range scans only, passive sensors, trying not to be detected." "Typical," Hyojin said. "Most aliens are terrified of being discovered by what they think are dangerous primitives." She pulled up the detailed analysis that Wonsik had prepared. The alien ship was clearly built for exploration, not war. Its design showed that the crew came from worlds with very controlled environments. Their technology was advanced in some ways, but it was also fragile. Everything about their ship suggested beings who had never faced real hardship. "Ma'am," called another technician, "they're launching some kind of probe." Hyojin watched as a small device separated from the alien ship and began drifting toward the planet. It was trying to look like space debris, but human sensors could easily tell the difference. The probe was packed with recording equipment and scanners. "Should we intercept it?" asked her assistant. "No," Hyojin replied. "Let them have their look, but make sure our own probes are watching them while they watch us." What the aliens did not know was that humans had been studying them just as carefully as they were studying the humans. Small, nearly invisible drones had been observing the alien ship for days. Wonsik and his team had analyzed every detail of the vessel's construction, its energy signatures, and its crew's behavior patterns. "They're peaceful," Wonsik had concluded in his report. "Probably scientists or explorers. Their ship is designed for comfort and safety, not combat. They come from worlds where the biggest danger is probably bad weather." Governor Tae-ho had read the report with interest. First contact with new alien species was always delicate, But this situation was unusual. Most of the time, aliens discovered humans by accident, usually when a human ship visited one of their worlds. This was the first time aliens had found a human settlement on what they would consider an uninhabitable planet. "What do you think they want?" Mi-sun had asked during their morning briefing. "Probably to understand how we survive here," Taeho replied. "To them, this planet must look like pure death. They can't understand how anyone could live here, let alone build cities." The alien probe drifted closer to the planet's atmosphere. Its sensors began taking detailed readings of the air composition, the radiation levels, and the surface conditions. What it found confirmed their worst fears about the planet's hostility. And yet, there were the cities below, clearly visible, and obviously thriving. On the alien ship, Dr. Nethara studied the probe's data with growing confusion. "The atmospheric readings are even worse than we thought," she told Commander Velthos. "The acid concentration in the rain would dissolve our hull plating in hours. The radiation from the star is intense enough to kill most life forms. How can anyone survive down there?" But the probe's cameras showed them more impossible sights. Humans were working outside during the morning's acid storm, wearing protective suits that looked far too thin to provide real safety. Children were playing in areas where the very air should have been instantly lethal. Vehicles moved through the storm as if it were nothing more than ordinary rain. "Look at this," said Velthos, pointing to one of the probe's images. "Those appear to be agricultural areas. They're growing food in soil that our instruments say is poisonous." Dr. Nethara examined the readings more closely. "Not just growing food," she said slowly. "Growing it successfully. The crop yields appear to be quite good." What they were seeing challenged everything they knew about the requirements for life. These humans had not just learned to survive in impossible conditions. They had learned to thrive there. Down on the planet's surface, Won-Sik was conducting his own observations. His team had been studying the alien ship using a network of concealed sensors spread throughout the system. Unlike the aliens, who were trying to remain hidden, the humans were gathering their intelligence openly and efficiently. "Their technology is interesting," Won-Sik reported to Governor Taeho. "Very sophisticated in some areas, but also very specialized. Everything about their ship suggests they come from carefully controlled environments." "Meaning?" Taeho asked. "Meaning they probably can't understand how we live the way we do," Won-Sik replied. "To them, adapting to harsh conditions probably means installing better air filters or stronger heating systems. The idea of actually changing to fit the environment, instead of changing the environment to fit you, is probably completely foreign to them." This was the key difference between humans and most other species they had encountered. When other species found a dangerous world, they either avoided it entirely or tried to make it safer through technology. Humans, on the other hand, had learned to make themselves more dangerous to match their environment. In New Busan schools, Haiwan and Jiwoo were learning exactly those skills. Their lessons included chemistry classes, where they learned to identify poison gases by smell, physics classes where they calculated safe distances from volcanic eruptions, and biology classes where they studied how their own bodies had adapted to their harsh world. "Why do other species find it so hard to live on planets like ours?" Hae-won asked her teacher. "Because they think safety comes from avoiding danger," the teacher replied. "We've learned that real safety comes from understanding danger and making it work for us instead of against us." It was a philosophy that ran through every aspect of human civilization on the planet. Instead of building cities that tried to shut out the hostile environment, they had built cities that used that environment as a source of power and resources. Instead of growing food in completely artificial conditions, they had developed crops that could turn the planet's poisons into nutrients. The alien probe continued its survey, recording more wonders that defied understanding. Mining operations that worked inside active volcanoes, transportation systems that used the planet's dangerous magnetic storms for power, manufacturing plants that processed the poisonous atmosphere into useful materials. They're not just surviving, Dr. Nethara said as she studied the probe's data. They're prospering. Their technology is adapted to use the planet's hostile conditions as advantages rather than trying to overcome them. Commander Velthos nodded slowly. A completely different approach to the problem of hostile environments. Instead of making the environment safer, they made themselves more capable of handling danger. It was a concept that would have far-reaching implications for galactic civilization. Most species expanded only to worlds that were similar to their home worlds, or worlds that could be made similar through terraforming. But these humans had shown that it was possible to adapt to any environment, no matter how hostile. As the day progressed, the alien probe gathered more data about human society on the deathworld. They recorded children playing games that would be considered extreme sports on most civilized worlds. They watched workers repairing equipment during conditions that would shut down entire cities on safer planets. They observed a civilization that had learned to dance with destruction and make it beautiful. But what they did not know was that every observation they made was being observed in return. Human technology had been quietly studying their ship, their crew, and their capabilities. The Watchers had become the watched, though they remained unaware of it. In the command center of New Busan, Governor Taeho made his decision. "It's time," he told his staff. "Send them a message. Let them know we'd like to meet." The first contact between humans and Veltharians was about to begin, though neither side yet understood just how much this meeting would change both of their species' understanding of what was possible in the universe. The message came as a complete shock to the Veltharian crew. They were monitoring what they thought were secret observations of the planet below when suddenly their communication system activated. A calm voice speaking perfect Veltharian filled their bridge. "Greetings, peaceful observers. This is Governor Taeho of New Busan Settlement. We have been aware of your presence for several days and would like to invite you to visit our city. We understand your ship's environmental requirements and have prepared suitable facilities for your safety." Commander Velthos nearly fell from his control station. Dr. Nethara made a sound that was half gasp, half whistle. Navigator Colvin started checking his instruments frantically, as if the message might be some kind of technical error. "They knew we were here," whispered scanner operator Ithek, "but we were hiding behind the moon. Our stealth systems were active. Apparently their technology is better than we thought," Velthos replied, trying to recover his composure. "And they speak our language perfectly." The message continued with practical details. The humans had prepared a landing area with controlled atmosphere and temperature. They had studied the Veltharian ship's design and understood what their crew would need to survive. Most remarkably, they had been observing the aliens just as carefully as the aliens had been observing them. "We know this must be surprising," the human voice said, with what sounded like gentle amusement. "Most species try to study us secretly, before making contact. We find it more efficient to simply introduce ourselves. Would you like to land, or would you prefer to meet in orbit?" Dr. Nethara was fascinated despite her shock. "They're treating this like a routine diplomatic contact," she said, "as if alien visitors were perfectly normal." What the Veltharians did not know was that alien visitors were becoming increasingly common for human settlements. Word was spreading through the galaxy about the strange species that lived on impossible worlds. Scientists, explorers, and the simply curious were all beginning to seek out human colonies to try to understand how they did what they did. Governor Taeho waited patiently for the aliens' response. He was reviewing the latest reports from 1-6 analysis team, while engineer Mi-sun checked the preparations for their visitors. The specially built diplomatic facility was ready, with atmosphere controls that could accommodate most known alien species. "They're probably trying to decide if we're dangerous," Mi-sun said as she tested the environmental systems one more time. Most. Aliens think we must be, Taeho replied. Anyone who can live on a world like this must be incredibly violent and aggressive. They don't understand that the opposite is usually true. It was a common misunderstanding. Species from safer worlds often assumed that humans must be warlike and brutal to survive such harsh conditions. In reality, the constant environmental challenges had taught humans to cooperate more, not less. When everyone faced the same deadly storms and earthquakes, working together was not just helpful, it was essential for survival. Finally, the alien ship responded. We accept your invitation, came Commander Velthos' voice, still sounding shaken. We will send a small shuttle to your prepared landing area. Excellent, Taeho replied. We look forward to meeting you. Please be aware that today's weather forecast includes a minor acid storm around midday, but it should not affect the landing area. The atmospheric processors will keep your arrival zone completely safe. To the humans, mentioning the acid storm was simple courtesy, like warning visitors about rain. To the Veltharians, it was another reminder of just how alien this world was. A minor acid storm was something that would require full evacuation procedures on any Veltharian world. As the alien shuttle approached the planet, its crew got their first close look at human technology. The landing area was a marvel of engineering, carved directly into a mountainside and protected by energy barriers that kept out the poisonous atmosphere. But what impressed them most was how efficiently it was built. Every part of the facility served multiple purposes, and everything was designed to work with the planet's hostile environment rather than fighting against it. The shuttle landed with a soft thump on the prepared pad. Through the viewing ports, the Veltharians could see humans waiting to greet them. The humans wore simple protective suits and moved with easy confidence, even though they were standing in an atmosphere that would kill most galactic species in seconds. Commander Velthos and Dr. Nethara put on their heavy environmental suits and checked their life support systems 3 times before leaving their shuttle. Even with all their protection, they felt nervous about breathing air that came from such a deadly world. Governor Taeho stepped forward to greet them as they emerged from their shuttle. Behind him stood Engineer Mi-sun, looking calm and professional, despite the fact that she was meeting aliens from another star system. "Welcome to our world," Taeho said through the communication system built into the landing area. "I hope your journey was pleasant." The contrast between the two groups was striking. The aliens moved carefully in their bulky environmental suits, constantly checking their instruments and breathing apparatus. The humans moved naturally and easily, treating the meeting as if it were happening in a peaceful garden instead of on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. "Thank you for your invitation," Velthos replied. "We must admit, we are quite amazed by what we have observed. How do you survive in such conditions?" Taeho smiled. "The same way your people survive in your conditions, I suppose. You adapt to what your world gives you. Would you like to see our city? We have prepared a tour route that will be safe for your equipment." As they moved from the landing area into the diplomatic facility, the aliens got their first taste of human engineering, philosophy. The building was not trying to create a completely artificial environment. Instead, it was designed to work with the planet's natural systems while providing safety for visitors. "Your atmospheric processing is remarkable," Dr. Nethara commented, as they entered a conference room with breathable air and comfortable temperature. "The efficiency levels are extraordinary." "Thank you," Mi-sun replied. "We have learned to work with our environment rather than against it. Fighting this planet would be impossible, so we learned to dance with it instead." The metaphor of dancing with danger was one that would stick with the Veltharians throughout their visit. It seemed to capture something essential about human philosophy that was completely foreign to their own way of thinking. As they settled into the conference room, Taeho began to explain something that would challenge the aliens' understanding of civilization itself. You probably wonder why we choose to live here, he said. Most species we meet assume we were forced to settle on this world, perhaps by war or disaster. Were you not? Asked Velthos. No, Tejo replied simply. We chose this world because it offered us something we could not find on safer planets. It offered us the chance to become something more than we were. Dr. Nethara leaned forward with interest. What do you mean? Comfort makes you weak, Misun explained. Safety makes you soft. If you want to grow, to become stronger and smarter and more capable, you need challenges. This world gives us challenges every day. It was a philosophy that would revolutionize galactic thinking about expansion and settlement. Most species sought out the most comfortable worlds they could find. Humans, it seemed, deliberately sought out the most challenging ones. But surely the risks, Velthos began, are what make us stronger. Tejo finished. Yes, this world is dangerous, but danger teaches lessons that safety never can. It forces innovation, cooperation, and growth. Our children learn skills here that would take years to develop on easier worlds. As the conversation continued, the aliens began to understand that they had not just discovered a species that could survive on deathworlds. They had discovered a species that thrived on challenge itself, that had learned to turn adversity into advantage and danger into opportunity. Outside the conference room, the day's acid storm was beginning. To the Veltharians, it was a terrifying reminder of the hostile world around them. To the humans, it was simply weather, no more threatening than rain or snow would be to beings from gentler worlds. Dr. Nethara had never seen anything like the tour that Dongwu and So Young gave her through New Busan. Every step revealed new impossibilities that challenged everything she thought she knew about the requirements for civilization. Their first stop was the agricultural district, where So Young led them through greenhouse complexes that defied belief. Plants grew in soil that the Veltharian instruments registered as pure poison. The air inside the greenhouses contained gases that would kill most known life forms, yet the crops were healthy and abundant. How is this possible? Dr. Nethara asked, her voice filled with wonder as she looked through the protective viewing window. We started with earth plants and helped them adapt, So Young explained. Generation by generation, we selected the ones that could handle more acid, more radiation, more toxic metals. Now, they actually prefer these conditions to the mild environments they came from originally. Through the window, they could see human workers moving among the plants. They wore light protective gear that looked completely inadequate for the conditions, yet they moved with easy confidence. Some of them were quite young, barely adults by Veltharian standards, yet they handled poisonous chemicals and dangerous equipment as naturally as Veltharian youth might handle simple garden tools. The root vegetables are particularly successful, So Young continued, pointing to a section where strange-looking plants grew in what appeared to be pure acid. They actually concentrate the heavy metals from the soil and turn them into nutrients. We export them to other human settlements. Commander Velthos found this detail especially shocking. You export food grown in these conditions to other settlements? Of course, Dongwu replied. Human settlements on different worlds develop different specialties based on their local conditions. We grow food that can survive extreme conditions. The settlement on Proxima 7 produces metals that can only be forged in their magnetic storms. The colony on Wolf 359b makes medicines from organisms that live in pure radiation. The concept of trade networks based on planetary hazards was completely alien to Veltharian thinking. Most species tried to make their colonies as similar as possible to their homeworlds. The idea of deliberately seeking out different dangers and turning them into economic advantages was revolutionary. Their next stop was the thermal processing plant, where Minho supervised operations that took place in conditions that would instantly vaporize most beings. Through thick protective barriers, the aliens watched humans working with temperatures and pressures that should have been impossible to survive. The air itself is burning. whispered Dr. Nethara as she watched workers moving through clouds of superheated steam. Not burning exactly, Minho explained cheerfully. Just very hot and full of reactive chemicals. The suits protect us from the worst of it, and we take regular breaks to cool down. What he called regular breaks happened every 20 minutes. What he considered protection would have been completely inadequate for any Veltharian. Yet his workers moved through the facility with practiced efficiency, operating machinery that processed the planet's poisonous atmosphere into clean air and pure water. This facility provides atmosphere for half the city, Minho continued. We take in the natural air from outside, strip out the useful chemicals, neutralize the dangerous ones, and output what we need to breathe. The waste products become raw materials for other industries. The aliens watched in amazement as toxic gases were transformed into breathable air through a process that was both incredibly complex and surprisingly elegant. Every step of the operation was designed to extract maximum value from materials that most species would consider pure waste. But perhaps the most shocking part of the tour was their visit to the city's education center, where they observed children learning skills that would be considered extreme survival training on most civilized worlds. Haewon and Jiwoo were in the middle of a chemistry lesson when the tour group arrived. Their teacher was showing them how to identify different types of poison gas by their color and smell. The children, who could not have been more than 12 years old by Veltharian standards, discussed the properties of various toxic substances with the casual knowledge that Veltharian adults might have about food or weather. Today, we're learning about sulfur compounds, the teacher explained to her young students. Who can tell me what happens when sulfur trioxide mixes with water vapor in the atmosphere? Several small hands shot up eagerly. It makes acid rain, called out Haewon. Very good. And what do we do if we're caught outside when the acid concentration is too high? Find shelter and wait for it to pass, Jiwoo answered. Unless you have good protective gear, then you can keep working if it's important. Dr. Nethara felt faint listening to children discuss such topics so casually. On Veltharian worlds, such knowledge would be restricted to specialist emergency workers. Here it was basic education that every child learned as naturally as they learned mathematics or literature. Don't they fear the dangers around them? She asked So Young quietly. Fear without understanding is useless, So Young replied. Fear with understanding becomes respect. Our children learn to respect their environment, not to be paralyzed by it. The tour continued to the recreation center, where the aliens observed children playing games that looked like training exercises for planetary survival. They watched young humans race through obstacle courses that simulated various environmental hazards, competing to see who could navigate dangerous conditions most efficiently. It's training disguised as fun, Dongwoo explained as they watched Haewon dodge a spray of simulated acid while laughing with delight. By the time they're adults, these skills are so natural that they don't have to think about them. The games were indeed training, but they were also genuinely enjoyable. The children were laughing and cheering, competing with good humor while learning skills that would keep them alive in their harsh world. They had taken the necessary and made it joyful. As the day progressed, the aliens saw more examples of human adaptation to their extreme environment. They visited workshops where artisans created beautiful objects from materials that would be considered industrial waste on other worlds. They observed transportation systems that used the planet's magnetic storms to move people and goods at incredible speeds. Everything serves multiple purposes, Commander Velthos observed as they watched a lightning rod that not only protected buildings but also generated power and provided communication relay services. Efficiency is survival, Mi-sun replied. We can't afford to waste anything, including danger. If something is going to try to kill us anyway, we might as well make it useful first. The philosophy behind this statement was profound. Instead of simply enduring hardship, humans had learned to transform hardship into advantage. Instead of surviving despite their environment, they had learned to prosper because of it. Near the end of their tour, they visited the city's cultural center, where they found art and music inspired by the planet's harsh beauty. Paintings captured the deadly glory of acid storms. Music echoed the rhythms of seismic activity. Poetry celebrated the dance between destruction and creation that defined life on their world. "Your people find beauty in what others would call horror," Dr. Nethara observed. "Beauty is everywhere," replied the artist they were speaking with. "You just have to know how to look for it. Our storms are terrible, but they're also magnificent. Our earthquakes are dangerous, but they're also powerful. Why focus only on the danger when there's also wonder?" It was a perspective that transformed everything. The Veltharians had been seeing New Busan as a settlement that survived against overwhelming odds, but the humans who lived there saw it as a community that had learned to find joy and meaning in the middle of cosmic forces that most beings could only fear. As they prepared to return to the diplomatic facility, Dr. Nethara realized that this tour had shown her more than just human survival techniques. It had shown her an entirely different way of relating to the universe itself. Where her people sought safety and comfort, these humans sought challenge and growth. Where her people tried to control their environment, these humans had learned to dance with forces beyond any control. "How many settlements like this do you have?" she asked Governor Tae-ho as they walked back through the city. "Dozens," he replied, "each one on a different type of dangerous world, each one learning to work with different deadly conditions. We're not just surviving anymore. We're exploring what it means to be truly alive." The evening discussion between Governor Tae-ho, Dr. Won-sik, and their Veltharian guests took place in the diplomatic facility's main conference room. Outside the windows, the planet's surface glowed with the light of lava flows and electrical storms. To the humans, it was a pleasant evening view. To the aliens, it looked like a vision of cosmic hell. "Your people's expansion philosophy is unlike anything we have encountered in the galaxy," Commander Velthos said, his voice filled with both admiration and confusion. "Most species seek out worlds that are similar to their homeworlds. You seem to deliberately choose the most dangerous planets you can find." Dr. Won-sik smiled as he poured tea for everyone. The tea was grown in New Busan's greenhouses, made from plants that had learned to thrive in conditions that would kill most vegetation. "Dangerous planets offer something that safe worlds cannot," he explained. "They offer transformation." "What do you mean?" asked Dr. Nethara. Tae-ho leaned forward, his expression serious but not grim. "When humans first left Earth, we made a discovery. The most comfortable planets were also the most boring ones. Everything was provided for us. There were no challenges that required us to grow or change or become something new. But surely safety and comfort are desirable," Velthos protested. "For a while, yes," Won-sik replied. "But humans need more than safety to truly live. We need purpose. We need challenges that push us to become better than we were yesterday. Safe worlds don't provide that." The concept was difficult for the Veltharians to understand. Their entire civilization was built around the pursuit of safety and comfort. They had spent thousands of years creating perfectly controlled environments where nothing dangerous or unpredictable could happen. "So you choose to live in danger?" Dr. Nethara asked. "We choose to live with challenge," Tae-ho corrected. "Danger is just one form of challenge. But when you learn to dance with danger, to make it serve your purposes instead of fearing it, then danger becomes something else entirely." To illustrate his point, Won-sik pulled up a holographic display showing the locations of human settlements throughout their region of space. Dozens of colonies were scattered across star systems, each one established on worlds that most species would classify as uninhabitable. "Each of these settlements faces different challenges," Won-sik explained. "The colony on Kepler 438b deals with constant tidal forces that would tear apart most structures. The settlement on Gliese 6167cc survives on a world where the day side is molten metal and the night side is frozen solid. The outpost on Wolf 1061C thrives in gravity that would crush most beings. And this makes you happy? Dr. Nethiara asked, sounding genuinely puzzled. It makes us alive, Tejo replied. It makes us grow. Every challenge we overcome makes us stronger, smarter, more capable. Every impossible world we learn to call home expands what we thought was possible. The aliens were beginning to understand something profound about human psychology. These beings did not just tolerate hardship. They actively sought it out because they had learned that comfort led to stagnation, while challenge led to growth. But what about the risks? Velthos asked. Surely many of your people die in these dangerous environments? Fewer than you might think, Wansik replied. Danger teaches caution. It forces cooperation. It demands innovation. People who live in challenging environments actually tend to live longer and healthier lives than those in completely safe ones because they're constantly adapting and improving. This was supported by the data from human settlements. Despite living in conditions that would instantly kill most galactic species, human mortality rates on dangerous worlds were actually lower than the galactic average for civilized species. The constant need to stay alert and work together had created remarkably resilient communities. There is something else, Tejo continued. Something that may be even more important than survival. Living on worlds like this changes how you see the universe itself. How so? Dr. Nathara asked. Tejo gestured toward the window where lightning was painting the sky in brilliant colors while acid rain fell in sheets that caught and reflected the light. Most beings look at a storm like that and see only destruction. We have learned to see the beauty in it as well. We see the power that can be harnessed, the energy that can be captured, the raw forces of creation and destruction dancing together. You find beauty in destruction? Velthos asked, sounding shocked. We find beauty in the dance between creation and destruction, Wansik corrected. Every storm that tears down also clears the way for something new to grow. Every earthquake that destroys also reveals new resources. Every challenge that seems impossible also offers new possibilities. This philosophical difference was perhaps even more significant than the technological ones. The Veltharians saw the universe as something to be controlled and made safe. Humans saw it as something to be partnered with and danced with, embracing both its creative and destructive aspects as part of a larger harmony. This is why other species struggle to understand us, Tejo continued. They see us choosing to live in hell and assume we must be desperate or insane. They don't understand that what looks like hell to them looks like opportunity to us. Dr. Nethara was quiet for a long moment, processing this radically different worldview. And you teach this philosophy to your children? We don't have to teach it, Wansik replied with a smile. They learn it naturally by living it. Children who grow up here don't see acid storms as terrible disasters. They see them as exciting weather that brings new energy to the city. They don't fear earthquakes. They understand them as the planet's way of reshaping itself. The conversation continued late into the evening, with the humans explaining their expansion philosophy in more detail. They spoke of worlds where they had learned to surf gravitational waves, planets where they harvested energy from black holes, moons where they grew crystals in pure vacuum. Each settlement was an experiment in pushing the boundaries of what was possible for life to achieve. We are not trying to conquer the universe, Tejo explained. We are trying to learn from it. Every impossible world teaches us something new about the nature of existence itself. And what have you learned? Dr. Nethera asked. That there are no limits except the ones we accept, Wansik replied. That growth comes from embracing challenge rather than avoiding it. That beauty and meaning can be found anywhere, if you know how to look for them. The Veltharians began to understand that they had not just discovered a species that could survive on deathworlds. They had discovered a species that had developed an entirely different relationship with existence itself. Where most beings sought to minimize risk and maximize comfort, Humans had learned to find joy and meaning in the very challenges that other species fled from. "What would happen," Velthos asked slowly, "if your people were given access to perfectly safe, perfectly comfortable worlds?" Teho and Wansik exchanged glances. "We tried that early in our expansion," Teho replied. "We found paradise worlds with perfect weather, no dangers, abundant resources." "And?" "We were miserable," Wansik said with a laugh. "Within a generation, our people were leaving those worlds to find new challenges. Perfect safety, it turns out, is perfectly boring. It was a revelation that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The idea that an intelligent species would voluntarily leave paradise to seek out hardship challenged every assumption about the goals and motivations of sentient life. As the evening wound down, Dr. Nethiara found herself looking at the storm, outside with new eyes. It was still terrifying to her, but she was beginning to see traces of the beauty that humans found in it. The raw power, the magnificent scale, the awesome display of cosmic forces in motion. "You have given us much to think about," she told her hosts. "This conversation will change how our people understand the possibilities of life in the universe." The seismic event began at 3:47 in the morning local time. What started as a minor tremor quickly escalated into something much more serious. The planet's monitoring systems registered a magnitude 8.2 earthquake centered directly beneath New Busan, followed by a cascade of secondary shocks that would have devastated most cities. Commander Velthos and Dr. Nethara were jolted awake in their quarters within the diplomatic facility. Emergency lighting flickered on as the building shook violently around them. Through their reinforced windows, they could see the city below as buildings swayed and sparks flew from damaged power lines. "We need to evacuate!" Velthos shouted, over the noise, reaching for his environmental suit. "The city will be destroyed!" But as they watched from their window, something remarkable happened. Instead of panic and chaos, they saw organized activity. Emergency lights came on throughout the city in coordinated patterns. People moved through the streets in orderly groups, following what were clearly well-rehearsed procedures. Governor Teho's voice came over the facility's communication system, calm and reassuring. "Our Veltharian guests, please remain in your quarters. Your building is rated for magnitude 9.5 events, and you are completely safe. What you are witnessing is a routine seismic emergency response." Routine? The aliens could hardly believe what they were hearing. This earthquake would have been classified as a catastrophic disaster on any Veltharian world, yet the humans were, treating it like a regular emergency drill. Through their window, they watched Security Chief Hyajin coordinate the city's response with smooth efficiency. Emergency teams moved through the streets, not in desperate rescue operations, but in careful inspection routines. They were checking infrastructure, making repairs, and ensuring that all citizens were accounted for. "Sector 7 reports all clear," came a voice over the city's communication network. "Thermal plant operating normally. Minor damage to collectors. On the south face, repair teams dispatched." "Acknowledged," Hyajin replied calmly. "Agricultural district, what's your status?" "All greenhouse complexes intact," came So Young's voice. "Actually, the soil shaking helped our root crops. We're expecting better yields this season." Dr. Nethara stared at the communication device in disbelief. Did she just say the earthquake helped their crops grow? What the aliens were witnessing was humanity's complete integration with their dangerous environment. The earthquake was not seen as a disaster to be survived, but as a natural event to be managed and, where possible, turned to advantage. Jaemin and Minho led repair teams that moved through the city while the ground was still shaking. They worked with practiced efficiency, reinforcing structures that needed support and rerouting power around damaged areas. Most remarkably, they seemed to be treating the ongoing earthquake as merely an inconvenience, like working during a rainstorm. "The main power conduit is damaged," Minho reported to the Emergency Coordination Center. Switching to backup thermal systems. Actually, the seismic activity is increasing thermal output by about 15%. We'll have extra power for the next few days. Even their backup systems were designed to take advantage of the planet's hostility. The earthquake that was threatening to destroy the city was simultaneously providing it with additional energy. In the agricultural district, Dongwu was leading teams that were not just protecting their crops, but actually expanding their growing areas. The earthquake had cracked open new sections of the mountainside, revealing fresh mineral deposits that could be turned into fertile soil. Team 3, start soil analysis on the new formations, he called out as another tremor shook the ground. If the mineral content is right, we can have new terraces planted within the week. The Veltharians watched in amazement as humans turned what should have been a crisis into an opportunity for growth. Buildings that were damaged were not just repaired but improved. Infrastructure that was disrupted was not just restored but expanded. "This is impossible," Velthos whispered as he watched construction crews working on a damaged building while the earthquake was still happening. "How can they work in such conditions?" "Practice," came Governor Tejo's voice through the intercom. He had apparently been monitoring their communications. "This is our 7th major seismic event this year. We've learned to work with earthquakes rather than waiting for them to end." The concept of working during a natural disaster was completely foreign to Veltharian thinking. Their response to any dangerous event was to take shelter and wait for safety to return. But humans had learned to find safety in the middle of danger itself. As the hours passed, the aliens witnessed more examples of humanity's unique crisis management philosophy. Children were evacuated from the education centers, but not to hide in shelters. Instead, they were taken to observation points where they could safely watch the earthquake and learn from it. "Remember what we talked about in geology class," they heard a teacher telling her students. "Watch how the different building types respond to the shaking. Which ones bend and which ones break." The children watched with fascination rather than fear, taking notes and asking questions about the forces that were reshaping their city. What would have been a traumatic experience on most worlds was being turned into an educational opportunity. The earthquake reached its peak intensity around dawn. The Veltharians felt the diplomatic facility sway alarmingly despite its advanced construction. Emergency alarms were sounding throughout the city, and rescue vehicles moved through the streets with lights flashing. But even at the height of the crisis, the humans maintained their remarkable composure. Emergency responders moved through the most dangerous areas with careful confidence, treating the life-threatening conditions as challenging working conditions rather than impossible obstacles. "Thermal plant reports loss of containment in Sector 12, came an urgent report over the communication system. "Dispatch the heavy response team," Hyajin replied immediately. "Full protective gear. Treated as a Code Yellow contamination event." Code Yellow? The aliens' instruments showed radiation and toxic gas levels that would require immediate planetary evacuation on most civilized worlds. Yet the humans were treating it as a manageable industrial accident. The heavy response team that deployed to handle the contamination moved through conditions that would instantly kill most galactic species. They worked for hours in temperatures that exceeded the melting point of most metals, breathing air that was more poison than atmosphere. "Containment restored," the team leader finally reported. "Minor equipment damage, no personnel injuries. We'll have full operations restored within 6 hours." 6 hours? The Veltharians expected such an incident to shut down the facility for months, if not permanently. But the humans were already planning to have everything back to normal before the day was over. As the earthquake finally began to subside, the aliens got to witness the final phase of humanity's crisis response. Teams moved through the city conducting damage assessments, but these were not the desperate surveys that most species would conduct after such a disaster. Instead, the humans were cataloging improvements and opportunities. Buildings that had been damaged were redesigned to be stronger. Infrastructure that had failed was rebuilt to take better advantage of seismic energy. Areas that had been destroyed were cleared for new construction projects that had been waiting for available space. Final assessment, Hyejin announced as the last tremors died away. Minor damage to 17 buildings, all repairs scheduled for completion within 48 hours. Thermal plant operating at 115% capacity due to increased seismic activity. Agricultural district reports 15% expansion of growing areas due to new mineral exposure. Overall impact, positive. Positive? The aliens could barely comprehend it. An earthquake that would have been considered a civilization-ending disaster on most worlds was being classified as a positive event because the humans had learned to extract more benefits from it than losses. Dr. Nethara realized that they had witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. They had seen a species that had learned to thrive not just despite natural disasters, but because of them. Humanity had developed a relationship with cosmic forces that transformed destruction into creation, crisis into opportunity. How? She whispered to herself, still staring at the city below where normal activity was already resuming. How is any of this possible? The departure ceremony was held 3 days after the earthquake, once the city had returned to what humans called normal operations. Commander Velthos and Dr. Nethara stood in the diplomatic facility's main hall, preparing to return to their ship with minds full of impossible memories and data that would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about life. Governor Tae-ho and Engineer Mi-sun had come to see them off, along with several other members of New Busan's leadership. The humans looked relaxed and pleased, as if they had enjoyed showing off their impossible city to curious visitors. "Before you leave," Tae-ho said, "there is something we would like to discuss with you. A proposal that could benefit both our peoples." Dr. Nethara activated her recording devices. Everything about this visit had been unprecedented, and she suspected this final conversation would be equally significant. "What you have witnessed here," Tae-ho continued, "is just one example of what humans have learned to achieve. We have settlements on dozens of worlds that other species consider uninhabitable. Each one has developed unique technologies and capabilities based on their local challenges." 1-6 stepped forward with a holographic display showing the locations of human settlements throughout the region. The colony on Proxima Centauri B has learned to harness stellar flares for power generation. The outpost on TRAPPIST-1E has developed mining techniques that work in tidally locked environments. The settlement on Kepler 452b grows food using methods that most species would consider impossible. All of these techniques, Mi-sun added, could be useful to other species who want to expand their own territories. We could help your people and others settle worlds that are currently considered unusable. Commander Velthos found the idea both fascinating and terrifying. "You are suggesting an alliance for planetary colonization?" "More than that," Tae-ho replied. "We are suggesting a partnership that could change how the galaxy approaches expansion itself. Instead of limiting settlement to the small number of worlds that happen to be naturally comfortable, we could open up thousands of new possibilities." Dr. Nethara understood the implications immediately. Most species were limited to colonizing worlds that were similar to their home worlds. This restriction meant that expansion was slow and competition for suitable planets was intense. But if human techniques could make dangerous worlds habitable, it would revolutionize galactic civilization. "Your people would serve as pioneers?" she asked. "We would serve as teachers," 1-6 corrected. "Some worlds will always require human settlement first because the initial conditions are too extreme for other species. But many planets could be made suitable for various forms of life with the right technology and techniques." The proposal was breathtaking in its scope. humans were offering to serve as the galaxy's advanced settlers, moving into impossible environments and transforming them into places where other species could eventually live. It would require unprecedented cooperation between species, but it could open up vast new regions of space for expansion. "There is something else," Mi-sun said. "Something we have learned that might be even more valuable than our survival techniques." "What is that?" Velthos asked. "The philosophy behind them," Taeho replied. "What we have discovered is not just how to survive in dangerous places, but why such survival is worthwhile. We have learned that challenge drives growth, that adversity creates strength, that the struggle to live makes life more meaningful." Dr. Nethara had been thinking about this aspect of human culture throughout their visit. "You believe that other species could benefit from exposure to more challenging environments?" "We believe that growth requires challenge," Wonsik said. "Not necessarily the extreme challenges that we prefer, but some level of difficulty that pushes individuals and societies to become more than they were." The conversation was moving into profound philosophical territory. Most galactic civilizations were based on the principle of maximizing comfort and minimizing risk. Human civilization seemed to be based on the opposite approach, and their success on worlds like this suggested that their philosophy had merit. "Consider this," Taeho said. "How long has it been since your people made a major breakthrough in technology or philosophy? How long since they accomplished something truly new and remarkable?" Velthos thought about it and realized the answer was disturbing. Veltharian society had been essentially unchanged for thousands of years. They had achieved comfort and safety, but they had also achieved stagnation. "Perfect safety," Mi-sun observed, "is the enemy of progress. Perfect comfort is the death of innovation. If you never face problems that require new solutions, you never develop the ability to solve new problems. But surely some level of safety is necessary for civilization to function," Dr. Nethara protested. "Of course," Wonsik agreed. "We are not suggesting that your people should immediately move to worlds like this one, but there are many levels between perfect safety and extreme danger. The key is finding the right level of challenge for each individual and each society. Humans were proposing something unprecedented, a galaxy-wide approach to civilization that balanced safety with challenge, comfort with growth, security with innovation. It would require species to voluntarily accept some level of risk in exchange for the possibility of advancement." "What would such a partnership look like in practice?" Velthos asked. "Human settlements would serve as research and development centers for extreme environment technologies," Taeho explained. "We would share our techniques with species who want to expand into more challenging territories. In exchange, we would gain access to technologies and knowledge from species who have developed in different directions. More importantly," Mi-sun added, "we would create exchange programs. Young individuals from various species could spend time in challenging environments, learning to push their boundaries and discover their potential. It would be voluntary, of course, but it could be transformative." Dr. Nethara imagined young Veltharians coming to worlds like this to learn human techniques for thriving in adversity. The idea was terrifying, but it was also exciting. What could her people become if they learned to embrace challenge instead of avoiding it? "There is one more thing," Wonsik said as they prepared to conclude the meeting. "Something you should know about human expansion plans." "Yes?" Velthos asked. "We are not finished exploring what is possible," Wonsik replied with a smile. "We have identified worlds that make this one look comfortable by comparison, planets where the surface is molten metal and the atmosphere is pure acid, moons where the gravity would crush most beings and the radiation would sterilize most equipment, gas giant atmospheres where the pressure is measured in millions of atmospheres. "And you plan to settle these places?" Dr. Nethera asked, though she already knew the answer. "We plan to learn from them," Teho replied. "Every impossible world teaches us something new about the nature of existence. Every challenge we overcome expands what we know is possible for life to achieve." As the Veltharians prepared to return to their ship, they carried with them more than just scientific data and cultural observations. They carried a completely new vision of what galactic civilization could become. Instead of a collection of species huddled on comfortable worlds, afraid to venture into the vast hostile universe around them, they could become a community of explorers and pioneers, pushing the boundaries of what life could achieve. The trip back to their ship was quiet, both aliens lost in thought about what they had witnessed. As their shuttle lifted off from the landing pad, they got one final view of New Busan. The city sprawled across the hostile landscape like a jewel set in nightmare, beautiful and impossible, and utterly alive. "What will you tell the council?" Velthos asked Dr. Nethera as they docked with their research vessel. "The truth," she replied, "that we have found a species that has learned to make paradise from hell itself, that they are offering to teach us how to do the same, and that accepting their offer might be the most important decision our civilization ever makes. The report they would file upon returning home would indeed change everything. Within months, scientists and philosophers from dozens of species would be requesting permission to visit human settlements. The galaxy was about to discover that the universe was far larger and more welcoming than anyone had ever imagined. In New Busan, Governor Teho and his team returned to their daily work of running an impossible city on an uninhabitable world. But they were already planning humanity's next great adventure. Wansik had identified a world where the surface temperature exceeded 2,000 degrees and the atmosphere rained liquid metal. "When do we start the survey mission?" Mi-sun asked as they reviewed the preliminary data. "Next month?" Teho replied with the kind of smile that most species reserved for discussions of comfortable vacations. "It should be interesting." For humans, interesting was the highest praise that any world could receive. It meant challenges worth facing, problems worth solving, and the chance to become something more than they had been before. It meant another opportunity to dance with the universe itself and discover new steps in the endless choreography of existence.